Projecting the Monster: Why You Hate the People Who Reflect Your Insecurities. Introduction: The Hypocrisy of Hatred. Think of the person you despise most. Bring their face into your mind right now. It might be a ruthlessly ambitious colleague who constantly steals the spotlight. It might be a former friend who operates with a shocking lack of shame. It might be a celebrity, a politician, or a public figure whose very existence triggers a visceral, burning knot of irritation in your chest. When you think of this person, a very specific internal monologue begins to play in your head. You tell yourself, "I hate them because they are arrogant. I hate them because they are selfish. I hate them because they are manipulative, loud, and entirely lacking in basic human decency." You look down upon them from a great height. You wrap yourself in a warm, comforting blanket of moral superiority. You tell yourself that your hatred is justified because you are a good person and they are a bad person. You believe your revulsion is a sign of your elevated ethical standards. This is the greatest, most devastating lie your ego has ever told you. Your hatred is not a moral compass. Your hatred is a mirror. In the ruthless clinical study of human psychology, there is a terrifying phenomenon that the average domesticated mind refuses to accept. We do not hate people because they are inherently evil. We hate people because they are giving themselves permission to execute the exact desires, ambitions, and behaviors that we have cowardly locked away inside ourselves. We do not hate the monster. We hate the reflection of our own repressed monster. Welcome to the dark science of psychological projection. From the moment you were born, society began a systematic process of domestication. You were taught to be polite, accommodating, and humble. You were shamed for being greedy, punished for being bossy, and disciplined for showing raw aggression. To survive in the tribe, you took all of your primal, dominant, and selfish urges and buried them in the basement of your subconscious. You built a fake identity, a persona of the nice, harmless, agreeable citizen. But those buried urges did not die. They metastasized. When you encounter someone in the real world who acts on those exact urges, someone who is unapologetically greedy, ruthlessly ambitious, or shamelessly self-promoting, it triggers a catastrophic cognitive dissonance in your brain. Their existence proves that the traits you buried are actually highly effective in the real world. Their success is a direct, unforgiving insult to your cowardice. If they are winning by being selfish, it means your decision to be selfless was actually just a weakness. Your ego cannot handle this devastating realization. To protect you from the crushing shame of your own unlived potential, your brain deploys a defense mechanism. It takes your subconscious envy and your repressed ambition, projects it outward onto the other person, and disguises it as righteous outrage. You convert your envy into hatred so you don't have to face your cowardice. In this exhaustive masterclass, we are going to perform a violent psychological surgery on your resentments. We will dismantle the illusion of your moral superiority. We will explore the exact neurological and Jungian mechanics of the shadow self and expose how your ego uses righteous indignation as a cheap dopamine sedative. You will learn the taxonomy of the mirror, how to decode exactly what your hatred of the narcissist, the opportunist, and the shameless self-promoter reveals about your own hidden genius. We will explore the tactical catastrophe of projection, proving that hating your rivals actually makes you blind, predictable, and easy to defeat. Finally, you will learn the dark art of shadow reclamation. You will learn to assassinate your moral hypocrisy, shatter the mirror, and absorb the raw, predatory energy of the very people you once despised. If you want to maintain the comforting illusion that you are a victim of toxic people, if you want to keep using your goodness as an excuse for your mediocrity, turn this audio off right now. Go back to the herd. Go back to your polite, harmless, invisible life. But if you are ready to look into the abyss of your own soul, if you are ready to stop complaining about the wolves and start growing your own fangs, if you are ready to reclaim the terrifying power you have projected into the world, then listen closely. It is time to shatter the mirror. It is time to meet the monster. Chapter 1: The Architecture of Projection, the Ego's Ultimate Defense. To weaponize your resentments, you must first understand the clinical mechanics of how they are manufactured. You must understand the architecture of projection. The concept of psychological projection was first introduced by Sigmund Freud and later expanded into a profound, comprehensive framework by the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. Jung posited that the human psyche is divided into the conscious ego, the I you present to the world, and the unconscious shadow. The shadow contains everything about yourself that you refuse to acknowledge. It contains your capacity for violence, your bottomless greed, your sexual deviance, and your ruthless desire for absolute dominance. The threat of the shadow. Why does the ego fear the shadow? Because the ego is entirely constructed around social survival. When you were a child, your survival depended literally and absolutely on the approval of your parents and teachers. When you grabbed a toy from another child, demonstrating primal territorial dominance, your parents scolded you. Don't be selfish. Share. Bad boy. Your primitive brain registered that scolding as a threat to your survival. It learned a mathematical equation. Dominance equals rejection. Rejection equals death. To stay alive, your prefrontal cortex learned to suppress the dominant urge. You fractured your own psyche. You took the selfish urge, labeled it as evil, and threw it into the dark. You adopted the persona of the good, sharing child. You did this thousands of times throughout your formative years. You repressed your anger to be easygoing. You repressed your ambition to be a team player. You repressed your pride to be humble. You successfully castrated yourself to ensure the tribe would let you stay by the fire. The mechanism of the mirror. But the law of physics dictates that energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be transformed. Psychological energy operates on the exact same law. The repressed traits do not vanish, they accumulate in the shadow, boiling under extreme pressure. Because you cannot look directly at your own shadow without experiencing massive, paralyzing shame and ego death, your brain utilizes a brilliant, deceptive workaround: projection. Projection is the psychological act of taking a repressed, disowned trait from your own unconscious mind and pasting it on the face of another human being. Imagine you are standing in a pitch-black room holding a slide projector. The slide contains an image of a terrifying monster, your repressed ambition, ruthlessness. Because the room is dark, you cannot see the slide in your own hand, but when another person walks into the room, you turn on the projector and shine the image directly on their chest. You look at them and scream, "Monster!" You genuinely believe the monster is them. You react to them with fear, disgust, and hatred. You are completely blind to the fact that the light source is originating from your own hands. The cognitive dissonance of reality. Projection is most violently triggered when you encounter someone who has not repressed the trait you are hiding. Let us use a clinical example. You are an employee who has repressed your desire for recognition. You believe that hard work should speak for itself. You sit quietly at your desk, grinding away, secretly hoping the boss will notice you and crown you the victor. Your colleague, Mark, operates differently. Mark is highly vocal. He aggressively networks. He takes credit for his successes publicly. He walks into the boss's office and demands a promotion. And Mark gets the promotion. When this happens, your brain experiences catastrophic cognitive dissonance. Your entire worldview that the humble, silent worker is morally superior and will eventually be rewarded by the universe has just been proven completely, factually incorrect by objective reality. Your ego is now staring down the barrel of a terrifying truth. Mark is not evil. Mark is just braver than I am. Mark gave himself permission to demand what he wanted, and I was too cowardly to do the same. If your ego accepts this truth, you must accept that your lack of a promotion is 100% your own fault. You must accept the crushing weight of your own cowardice. The ego will do anything to avoid this pain, so it deploys the ultimate defense mechanism. It projects the shadow. Instantly, your subconscious rewrites the narrative. It floods your brain with the dopamine of righteous indignation. You tell yourself, I didn't get the promotion because I have integrity. Mark got the promotion because he is a sleazy, manipulative, narcissistic sociopath. I am better than him. You have successfully converted your internal inadequacy into external moral superiority. You feel a sudden rush of relief. You are safe. You are the victim of an unjust system rather than the architect of your own failure. And in that exact moment, you have permanently sealed your own doom. By labeling Mark's effective strategies as evil, you have forbidden yourself from ever learning from them. You have locked yourself in the cage of your own righteousness. Chapter 2: The Sedative of Moral Superiority. To master the dark psychology of the self, we must look at the true nature of human morality. Society teaches us that morality is absolute. We are taught that humility, self-sacrifice, and politeness are inherently good, while arrogance, selfishness, and aggression are inherently bad. The Machiavellian sovereign understands a much darker, evolutionary truth. Morality is frequently used as a camouflage for weakness. The 19th century philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche perfectly deconstructed this phenomenon in his concept of master-slave morality. Nietzsche observed that in the ancient world, the strong, capable, and dominant individuals, the masters, defined good as anything that enhanced power, vitality, and success. Strength, pride, and victory were virtues. Bad was anything associated with weakness, sickness, or failure. The weak, subjugated masses could not compete in this arena of power. They were physically and strategically outmatched. They suffered. But the human ego cannot tolerate permanent subjugation without a coping mechanism. So, the weak orchestrated the greatest psychological coup in human history. They inverted the value system. They looked at the traits of the strong, wealth, dominance, pride, and ambition, and they redefined them as evil. Then they looked at their own unavoidable traits: poverty, submission, meekness, and inability to take revenge, and redefined them as virtues. They called their submission humility. They called their inability to enact revenge forgiveness. They called their poverty spiritual purity. By inventing this new moral framework, the weak no longer had to feel ashamed of their weakness. They could look at the powerful kings and conquerors and say, "You may have the gold and the castles, but we are morally superior. We are the good people. You are the evil people." The dopamine of righteous indignation. This slave morality is the exact software your brain is running when you project your shadow on a successful rival. When you hate someone who is outperforming you, you are engaging in the virtue of the powerless. Have you ever noticed how good it feels to gossip with your coworkers about the boss you all hate? Have you noticed the warm, intoxicating rush of energy you feel when you read a scandal about a wealthy celebrity who is being canceled on the internet? That feeling is a massive spike of dopamine and serotonin. Righteous indignation is one of the most highly addictive neurochemical states the human brain can experience. It provides the exact same chemical reward as cocaine or gambling. When you judge someone else, your brain rewards you with a hit of status-elevating chemicals. For a brief, fleeting moment, by tearing them down in your mind, you feel elevated, you feel safe, you feel significant. But it is a synthetic high, it is a sedative. While you are sitting in the break room getting high on the dopamine of complaining about the arrogant boss, the executive is sitting in the boardroom accumulating actual power, actual wealth, and actual leverage. The executive is acquiring hard assets. You are acquiring fake moral points in a game that no one is tracking. The lie of the toxic person. In modern psychology pop culture, the ultimate manifestation of slave morality is the weaponization of the word toxic. Today, anyone who holds a hard boundary, anyone who refuses to coddle your emotions, and anyone who outcompetes you is immediately labeled toxic, a narcissist, or a sociopath. This language is a massive collective projection. It is a way for weak, undisciplined, highly sensitive people to avoid taking responsibility for their own emotional regulation. If someone speaks to you directly and demands excellence, and you burst into tears, the sovereign response is to recognize your own emotional fragility and build a thicker skin. The subject response is to label the other person toxic so you do not have to change. By labeling the people who make you uncomfortable as evil or toxic, you absolve yourself of the requirement to compete with them. You build a psychological panic room and lock yourself inside, convinced that the rest of the world is diseased, while you slowly rot from irrelevance. To reclaim your power, you must completely and violently assassinate your addiction to moral superiority. You must accept that your hatred does not make you a saint, it makes you a spectator. Chapter 3: The Hall of Mirrors. Decoding your specific hatreds. If hatred is a projection of the shadow, how do we decode the message? How do we use the people we despise as a psychological treasure map? We must walk into the Hall of Mirrors. We must look at the specific archetypes of people that trigger your deepest, most irrational revulsion, and translate the exact repressed traits they are reflecting back at you. When you feel that visceral, burning knot in your stomach toward another human being, you must stop asking, "What is wrong with them?" You must ask the clinical, terrifying question, "What is this person giving themselves permission to do that I have forbidden myself from doing?" Let us dissect the 3 most common targets of human projection. Avatar 1, the shameless self-promoter. The target: This is the person on your social media feed or in your industry who is constantly, aggressively broadcasting their wins. They post photos of their awards, they talk about how much money they make, and they are constantly pitching their services. They seem completely immune to the concept of cringe or embarrassment. Your conscious monologue. They are so desperate for attention, it's pathetic. They have no class. True professionals don't need to brag. I would never stoop so low as to constantly beg people to look at me. I have dignity. The shadow translation, the truth. You do not hate them because they lack class. You hate them because they are immune to the fear of judgment, a fear that currently paralyzes you. Deep in your shadow is a desperate, starving desire to be seen, recognized, and applauded for your brilliance, but you are absolutely terrified of rejection. You are terrified that if you put yourself out there and say, "Look at how good I am," the world will laugh at you and say, "No, you aren't." To protect yourself from the pain of potential rejection, you adopted the persona of quiet humility. You hide your work. You wait to be discovered. When you see the self-promoter executing without fear, they trigger your shame. They prove that visibility is a choice, not a talent. Your hatred is a projection of your own cowardice regarding visibility. You hate their shamelessness because your shame is the very chain holding you down. Avatar 2. The ruthless opportunist. The target. This is the colleague or acquaintance who views every human interaction as a transactional game of leverage. They flatter the boss, they subtly step over their peers, and they abandon relationships the second they are no longer useful. They are cold, calculating, and highly upwardly mobile. Your conscious monologue. They are a sociopath. They have no loyalty and no soul. They treat people like stepping stones. I believe in authentic connection and fairness. I would rather be broke than sacrifice my humanity to get ahead. The shadow translation, the truth. You do not hate them because they are soulless. You hate them because they understand the mechanics of power, and you refuse to learn them. Deep in your shadow is a Machiavellian strategist. You possess the intellectual capacity to calculate leverage, to manipulate outcomes, and to ruthlessly prioritize your own ascent. But society shamed you into believing that ambition must be fair, and that everyone should cross the finish line together. You adopted the persona of the loyal team player. You sacrifice your own time to help colleagues who will never repay you. You stay in dead-end situations out of a misplaced sense of guilt. When you see the opportunist effortlessly cutting ties and climbing the ladder, they trigger your resentment because they are breaking the rules you have enslaved yourself to. They prove that loyalty to a failing system is a tax only the weak pay. You hate their ruthlessness because you are a victim of your own pathological empathy. Avatar 3. The arrogant boundary setter. This is the person who says no with absolutely zero apology or explanation. If you ask them for a favor, they simply decline. If they don't want to attend an event, they don't go. They take up physical space, they speak their mind bluntly, and they seem entirely unconcerned with whether or not you feel comfortable in their presence. Your conscious monologue. They are so rude and self-centered. They think they are better than everyone else. They have no basic manners or consideration for other people's feelings. It takes zero effort to be polite. The shadow translation. The truth. You do not hate them because they are rude. You hate them because they are sovereign, and you are a slave to the opinions of others. Deep in your shadow is a fierce, territorial predator who desperately wants to stop being a dumping ground for other people's problems. But you suffer from the disease to please. You are terrified of conflict. You say yes to obligations you hate because you cannot handle the momentary discomfort of someone being disappointed in you. You adopted the persona of the accommodating martyr. When you see the boundary setter protecting their energy with cold, surgical precision, you trigger your exhaustion. They prove that you do not have to suffer fools, and that your exhaustion is self-inflicted. You hate their arrogance because you mistake their absolute self-respect as an attack on your people-pleasing nature. Practice Application 1: The Shadow Mirror Audit. To break the delusion, you must force your prefrontal cortex to analyze your emotional reactions. You must conduct the shadow mirror audit. Take a blank sheet of paper. You must do this in total privacy, as you are about to extract highly classified psychological data from your own mind. The target: write down the name of the person you currently resent, envy, or despise the most in your professional or social orbit. The crime: write down the exact trait they possess that triggers your disgust. For example, they are obnoxiously loud about their success. The inversion: the hard truth. Cross out their name, write your own name, then invert the crime into a statement of your own repressed desire. For example, I am terrified of broadcasting my success because I am a coward who fears the judgment of strangers. I use humility as an excuse to hide. Feel the physical sting in your chest as you write that sentence. That spike of anxiety and shame is the feeling of the ego losing its camouflage. That is the feeling of the truth. You do not have to like the person. You do not have to become their friend, but you must clinically acknowledge that the weapon they are using to succeed is the exact weapon you need to extract from your own shadow. Chapter 4: The Tactical Catastrophe of the Blind Spot. Understanding projection is not merely a philosophical exercise for achieving inner peace. In the realm of dark psychology and power dynamics, understanding projection is a matter of tactical survival. When you hate an opponent, a rival, or a competitor, you are committing the most fatal sin in the theater of conflict. You are blinding yourself to reality. The ancient Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu famously wrote, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." When you are trapped in psychological projection, you violate both halves of this fundamental law. Because you are hiding your true desires in the shadow, you do not know yourself. And because you are projecting a cartoonish, exaggerated monster onto your rival, you do not know your enemy. The mathematics of emotional stupidity. Let us look at the cold mathematics of hatred in a competitive environment. Imagine you are competing against a rival business or a rival executive for a massive contract. Your rival uses a strategy that you consider unethical or sleazy. Perhaps they use highly aggressive sales tactics, or they poach your top clients using manipulative charm. If you view them through the lens of projection, your brain floods with cortisol and the dopamine of righteous indignation. You retreat to your boardroom with your team, and you spend hours complaining about how terrible and dishonest the rival is. You bond over your shared moral superiority. While you are having an emotional group therapy session, what is your rival doing? Your rival is looking at the board objectively. They are evaluating the leverage. They are calculating your weaknesses. They are not burdened by hatred. They are powered by logistics. By categorizing your rival as evil, you have subconsciously dismissed their intelligence. You refuse to study their tactics because studying them would feel like validating them. You tell yourself, "I would never lower myself to learn from someone like that." This is the ultimate tactical catastrophe. Hatred makes you predictable, and contempt makes you stupid. When you despise someone, you underestimate them. You assume that because they lack your moral compass, they must also lack competence. But history and the corporate world are littered with the corpses of highly moral individuals who were utterly annihilated by ruthless, hyper-competent predators. The law of asymmetrical animosity. In power dynamics, we observe a principle known as the law of asymmetrical animosity. This law states that in any rivalry, the person who holds the most emotional hatred toward the other is always at a massive strategic disadvantage. Hatred is a highly expensive, energy-draining emotion. It consumes vast amounts of cognitive bandwidth. If you hate your rival, you are thinking about them when you wake up, when you are in the shower, and when you are trying to fall asleep. You are burning your finite mental energy obsessing over their character flaws. The master strategist does not feel hatred. The master strategist feels cold, clinical curiosity. When a sovereign encounters a rival who is using dirty or aggressive tactics to win, the sovereign does not clutch their pearls and complain to HR. The sovereign observes the rival like a biologist observing a fascinating new virus under a microscope. The sovereign asks, "What exact psychological triggers are they using to steal my clients? What is the mechanical architecture of their aggressive sales funnel? How are they bypassing the traditional rules without getting caught?" The sovereign strips away the moral judgment and extracts the raw mechanical data. They realize that a weapon has no morality. A sword is not evil, it is simply sharp. If the enemy has a sharper sword, you do not complain about the unfairness of the blade. You study the metallurgy, steal the design, and forge a heavier, deadlier weapon of your own. The disarming power of clinical respect. To defeat the monster you project, you must learn to generate a terrifying, counterintuitive emotion, clinical respect. You do not have to respect their character, you do not have to respect their humanity, but you must absolutely, coldly respect their capability. When you respect an opponent's lethality, your amygdala stops panicking and your prefrontal cortex engages. You stop reacting emotionally to their provocations. You stop falling into the traps they set for your ego. If your narcissistic colleague attempts to publicly humiliate you in a meeting to steal your status, the hater gets visibly angry, defensive, and red in the face. They lose the frame. The sovereign, who has studied the colleague with clinical respect, expects the attack. They know it's coming. When the insult lands, the sovereign does not feel anger. They feel a cold, detached sense of validation because their predictive model was correct. They deploy the amused mastery frame, absorbing the attack with a slight smile, and effortlessly redirect the energy back at the attacker, exposing the colleague's desperation to the room. You can only dismantle an opponent whose architecture you have deeply, objectively studied, and you cannot study what you are too busy projecting upon. Practice Application 2. The Tactical Extraction Protocol. Your next assignment is to extract the strategic data from your enemy, stripping away the emotional noise. Think of a specific scenario where your rival or a person you despise beat you or gained an advantage over you. Write down the scenario. Now you must rewrite the narrative of their victory using absolutely zero emotional or moral language. You cannot use words like manipulative, sleazy, unfair, or arrogant. You must write it like a machine code. Emotional version, weak. Mark stole my promotion by being a manipulative kiss-ass and taking credit for my ideas in front of the CEO. Tactical extraction, strong. Mark identified that the CEO values highly vocal, confident presentations of data over silent execution. Mark established proximity to the decision-maker. Mark utilized framing techniques to ensure his name was chronologically associated with the successful project outcomes during executive briefings. Look at the difference. The first version makes you a helpless victim of an evil person. The second version provides you with a precise, actionable blueprint of the corporate battlefield. It tells you exactly what variables you need to manipulate: proximity to power, vocal framing, presentation skills, to secure the next victory. By removing the projection, you have stolen their playbook. You have turned your enemy into your unpaid mentor. This is the agonizing, necessary realization you must endure to escape the matrix of the victim. Your hatred is an illusion. Your moral superiority is a sedative. Your righteous indignation is a biological trick designed to keep you blind, weak, and perfectly safe in the cage of your own unfulfilled potential. But diagnosis is only the beginning. Recognizing the projection does not automatically integrate the power. Staring at the mirror and acknowledging that the monster is you does not teach you how to pick the lock, open the basement door, and put a leash on the beast. In Part 2 of this masterclass, we will move from psychological autopsy to active, ruthless weaponization. We will explore the dark art of shadow reclamation. We will explore how to safely dismantle the persona of the nice guy, how to unchain your repressed Machiavellian intellect, and how to harness the immense, terrifying, and completely amoral energy of your shadow without destroying your own life. We will learn how to stop projecting the monster and how to become the sovereign who commands it. The mirror is cracked. The illusion is fading. Prepare yourself. The true descent into the dark is about to begin. Chapter 5: The Death of the Nice Guy Persona. Welcome back to The Descent. In the first half of this masterclass, we forced you to stare into the clinical, unforgiving reality of the Hall of Mirrors. We stripped away your favorite sedative, your righteous indignation, and exposed the terrifying truth. The monster you hate in others is the exact reflection of the genius you have buried within yourself. But acknowledging the projection is merely an intellectual exercise. It is the equivalent of a prisoner recognizing the shape of their cell. It does not open the door. To escape the cage of your own mediocrity, you must commit an act of psychological violence against yourself. You must assassinate the architect of your cage. You must execute the persona. You must permanently dismantle the nice guy. The covert contract of the domesticated mind. In the realm of dark psychology, the nice guy, or nice girl, is not a compliment. It is a diagnosis of a severe, self-inflicted psychological pathology. When you were domesticated by society, you were taught a massive, invisible lie. Psychologists call this the covert contract. The covert contract is a subconscious agreement you made with the universe when you decided to repress your shadow. The contract states, if I am polite, if I hide my ambition, if I never step on anyone's toes, and if I put everyone else's needs before my own, then the universe, my boss, and my partners will magically recognize my goodness and reward me with success, love, and promotion. You operate under the delusion that goodness is a currency that can be exchanged for leverage. This is why you hate the narcissist and the opportunist. They do not sign the covert contract. They recognize that the universe does not care if you are nice. The universe responds exclusively to force, leverage, and the assertion of will. When the opportunist gets the promotion you silently waited for, you feel a profound, burning sense of betrayal. You cry out to the void, "It's not fair. I followed the rules. I was the good person. Why are they winning?" The Machiavellian sovereign looks at you with cold, clinical pity. You are demanding a payout from a contract the universe never signed. The biology of harmlessness. To survive the modern battlefield, you must realize that being nice is often just a camouflage for being harmless. There is a profound biological difference between a person who is peaceful because they lack the capacity for violence and a person who is peaceful despite possessing an overwhelming capacity to destruction. A rabbit is not moral because it does not eat wolves. A rabbit is simply biologically incapable of predation. Its peacefulness is a product of its weakness. It is prey. The integrated sovereign, the true apex presence, operates like the sheathed sword. They possess the fangs, the claws, the cunning, and the absolute, terrifying capacity to destroy their opponents. But they possess the supreme executive function to keep the sword sheathed until it is strategically necessary to draw it. When you project your aggression, your selfishness, and your ambition onto others and label it toxic, you are effectively defanging yourself. You are cutting off your own claws so the sheep will accept you into the herd. You become the rabbit, and then you have the audacity to resent the wolves for eating you. Practice Application 3. The Covert Contract Audit. To reclaim your shadow, you must violently tear up the covert contract. You must stop waiting for the world to notice you. You have begun to hunt. Chapter 6. The Dark Art of Shadow Reclamation. Now that the persona of the nice guy has been executed, the basement door is unlocked. You are standing at the top of the stairs, looking down into the dark. It is time to engage in the most dangerous, terrifying, and profoundly liberating psychological process a human being can undergo: shadow reclamation. Carl Jung stated that the shadow contains 90% pure gold. The raw, primal energies that you repressed, your anger, your greed, your selfishness, your dominance, are not inherently evil. They are simply raw, unrefined psychological uranium. When uranium is left unmanaged, it creates toxic radiation. When uranium is placed into the highly structured, perfectly managed architecture of a nuclear reactor, it generates enough power to light up entire cities. Shadow reclamation is the process of extracting the raw uranium of your repressed desires, stripping away the toxic shame society attached to it, and placing it into the reactor of your prefrontal cortex. You are going to take the exact traits you hate in your enemies, and you are going to install them in yourself. The alchemy of amoral energy. The first step of reclamation requires a total paradigm shift regarding morality. As we discussed in Part 1, the masses label aggressive traits as bad and passive traits as good. The sovereign understands that traits are fundamentally amoral. They are tools. A hammer is not evil because it can break a skull. It is a tool that can also build a house. The morality is determined entirely by the intent of the wielder. Selfishness is not evil. It is the amoral drive for resource accumulation. When driven by a blind ego, it creates a tyrant. When harnessed by a sovereign, it ensures absolute financial independence and the ability to dictate one's own reality. Manipulation is not evil. It is the amoral science of influencing human behavior. When used by a sociopath, it destroys victims. When used by a master negotiator, it bypasses defensive egos, aligns conflicting parties, and builds empires. Arrogance, in its rawest form of unyielding self-belief, is not evil. It is the amoral armor against the crushing doubt of the masses. When you hate the shameless promoter or the ruthless opportunist, you are hating them because they are wielding the hammer and you have convinced yourself that hammers are illegal. You must drop the moral judgment. You must look at the hammer with cold, clinical lust. The process of integration. You do not reclaim the shadow by letting it take over your life. If you simply unleash your repressed rage and greed without discipline, you will not become a sovereign. You will become a chaotic, destructive psychopath. You will blow up the reactor and destroy your life. Integration is the absolute surgical fusion of the shadow's energy with the persona's discipline. You take the capacity for ruthlessness and you put it on a leash. When you sit in a high-stakes corporate negotiation, your civilized persona understands the etiquette. You smile, you offer coffee, you speak with articulate professionalism, you wear the velvet glove. But beneath the table, the shadow is awake. The shadow is calculating the opponent's weaknesses. The shadow is immune to the opponent's guilt trips. The shadow ensures that beneath the velvet glove, your hand is made of solid, unyielding iron. When the opponent attempts to manipulate you or lowball your value, the persona does not panic. The persona simply steps aside for a microsecond and lets the shadow flash its eyes. You drop your vocal tonality. You hold the silence. You project a terrifying, immovable boundary that silently communicates, "I am perfectly willing to burn this deal to the ground and walk away without a single shred of remorse." The opponent senses the monster in the dark. They immediately backpedal, and then the persona steps back in, smiles warmly, and signs the contract. You have achieved victory through the synthesis of light and dark. You have become whole. Chapter 7. Weaponizing the Reflected Traits. Let us return to the Hall of Mirrors. We are going to revisit the 3 avatars of your hatred that we decoded in Part 1. But this time, we are not just analyzing them. We are going to dissect their exact behavioral algorithms, strip away the moral judgment, and install their programming directly into your operating system. We are going to weaponize the reflections. Weaponizing Avatar 1, the shameless self-promoter. The original hate, you despised their constant broadcasting of success, their lack of cringe, and their aggressive visibility. You projected your fear of rejection onto them, disguising it as a preference for humility. The extracted weapon, strategic omnipresence. The shameless self-promoter understands a brutal economic truth that your humility refuses to accept. In the modern attention economy, obscurity is a death sentence. It does not matter if you're the most brilliant coder, the most talented writer, or the most effective executive in the world. If you are operating in the dark, you will be beaten by an average performer who knows how to hold a spotlight. The market does not reward silent competence. The market rewards perceived authority. To reclaim this shadow trait, you must violently assassinate your fear of cringe. You must understand that cringe is an imaginary boundary created by the weak to shame the bold for trying. The Sovereign Protocol. Starting tomorrow, you will begin a campaign of strategic omnipresence. You will strip away the emotion from self-promotion and treat it as cold, logistical data entry. When you complete a major project, you will not wait for your boss to notice. You will write a clinical, data-driven summary of the exact revenue or efficiency your project generated, and you will distribute it to the executive team. You will actively seek platforms, speaking engagements, and high-visibility environments. When the voice of your old nice guy ego whispers, "People will think you are bragging," you will deploy the shadow override. You will say, "I do not care what the spectators think. I am building an empire, and empires require broadcasting." You will steal the promoter's visibility, but you will back it up with your elite competence, creating an unstoppable force. Weaponizing Avatar 2, the ruthless opportunist. The original hate, you despised their transactional nature, their lack of loyalty, and their ability to effortlessly cut ties for upward mobility. You projected your pathological empathy and your enslavement to the team player myth onto them, calling them sociopaths. The extracted weapon, leverage supremacy and asymmetric loyalty. The ruthless opportunist understands the true physics of power. Loyalty to a failing system or a toxic individual is not a virtue, it is a profound tactical error. You have used loyalty as an excuse to stay in bad jobs, to tolerate parasitic friends, and to avoid the terrifying friction of making aggressive upward moves. You bleed your energy into people who offer absolutely zero return on investment, all so you can maintain the identity of the good friend. To reclaim this shadow trait, you must unchain your inner Machiavellian. You must view your time, your energy, and your network as a finite, incredibly expensive portfolio of assets. The Sovereign Protocol. You will implement the doctrine of asymmetric loyalty. You will ruthlessly audit your professional and social circles. Anyone who is a net negative on your energy, your ambition, or your trajectory will be systematically excised. You will not offer a long, emotional explanation. You will execute a cold, clinical fade. In the corporate environment, you will stop volunteering for low visibility, high effort grunt work simply to be a team player. You will optimize your labor exclusively for projects that offer high leverage, direct proximity to decision makers, and clear upward mobility. You will treat corporate relationships as strategic alliances. You will offer immense value to those above you, not out of sycophancy, but as a calculated trade for access and power. You will steal the opportunist's strategic calculus, but you will govern it with your long-term vision, ensuring you build bridges of iron rather than burning them out of petty greed. Weaponizing Avatar 3. The arrogant boundary setter. The original hate, you despised their blunt refusal to accommodate others, their unyielding no, and their absolute physical and energetic sovereignty. You projected your disease to please and your terror of conflict onto them, labeling their self-respect as rudeness. The extracted weapon, the iron perimeter. The arrogant boundary setter understands the most fundamental law of psychological survival. If you don't fiercely protect your own borders, the world will turn you into a dumping ground. Your politeness is exhausting you. Every time you say yes to an obligation you hate, you are committing a micro-betrayal against your own soul force. You are teaching your subconscious mind that the comfort of a stranger is more valuable than your own life force. To reclaim this shadow trait, you must embrace the terrifying friction of the no. You must learn to look people in the eye, deny their request, and feel absolutely zero guilt. The Sovereign Protocol. You will construct the iron perimeter. The word no is a complete sentence. Starting today, when you decline a request, you are forbidden from offering a soft, rambling apology. You will not say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I would love to, but I'm just so busy." You will deploy the shadow's unyielding boundary. You will say, with a calm, resonant, downward inflection, "I am unavailable for this. Thank you for thinking of me." And then you will execute the most difficult part of the maneuver. You will hold the silence. You will not fill the awkward void with justifications. You will let them feel the dense, immovable gravity of your refusal. You will steal the boundary setter's absolute sovereignty, but you will wield it with cold, polite professionalism, making your no impossible to argue with. Chapter 8. The Sovereignty of the Integrated Mind. When you systematically strip away the projections, when you stop hating the monster and start dissecting its mechanics, you undergo a profound psychological metamorphosis. You cross the threshold from the subject to the sovereign. The subject lives in a chaotic, terrifying world. They are constantly victimized by toxic people. They are constantly exhausted by their own empathy. They spend their days reacting, complaining, and judging others from the safe, sterile balcony of their moral superiority. They are fragile. They are predictable. They are weak. The integrated sovereign lives in an entirely different reality. When you pull the shadow out of the basement and seat it at the boardroom table of your mind, the noise of the world simply stops. The end of emotional leakage. The most immediate physical change you will experience is the complete cessation of emotional leakage. When you encounter an aggressive, manipulative, or highly narcissistic individual, your amygdala will no longer panic. You will not feel the spike of righteous indignation. You will not feel the desperate urge to gossip about them to your peers. Because you have acknowledged the capacity for manipulation and narcissism within yourself, you are no longer shocked or offended when you see it in the wild. You recognize the code. Instead of reacting with anger, you react with supreme clinical observation. When a rival attempts a Machiavellian maneuver against you, you watch them the way a grand master watches an amateur try a basic chess opening. You see the mechanics of their trap before it even closes. You smile, the quiet, hidden smile of the predator who just realized the prey thinks it's hunting. You effortlessly sidestep their maneuver, absorb their kinetic energy, and throw them off the board, and you do it with a completely flat heart rate. This emotional detachment is the ultimate armor. When people realize they cannot offend you, they cannot trigger you, and they cannot make you hate them, they realize they have absolutely no power over you. You become an impenetrable fortress. The magnetism of the sheathed sword. Furthermore, this integration creates a terrifyingly magnetic aura. Human beings possess an ancient, subconscious radar for capability. We are biologically programmed to detect who in the room is harmless and who in the room is lethal. When you fully integrate your shadow, your entire physical presence shifts. Your posture broadens, your vocal tonality drops, your eye contact becomes piercing, steady, and unblinking. You exude the energy of the sheathed sword. People will look at you and subconsciously register a profound paradox. This person is incredibly polite, articulate, and warm, but there is a dark, heavy, terrifying density behind their eyes. If I cross them, they will dismantle me without a second thought. This paradox is the very definition of elite charisma. You do not have to yell, you do not have to boast, you do not have to threaten. Your mere presence commands absolute respect, because the room intuitively understands that you possess the exact predatory tools required to conquer them, and the supreme discipline to choose peace. You are no longer a good person because you are afraid to be bad. You are a highly capable, immensely dangerous force of nature who has chosen to be disciplined. You have moved beyond morality. You have achieved mastery. Conclusion: shattering the mirror. You have reached the end of the Hall of Mirrors. We began this journey by exposing the greatest lie your ego has ever constructed. We dragged your hatred, your resentments, and your self-righteous complaints into the clinical light of the surgical theater. We exposed the biological sedative of moral superiority. We revealed that your righteous indignation is nothing more than a cheap dopamine hit designed by your cowardice to keep you safe from the terrifying reality of your own unlived potential. We decoded the avatars of your disgust. You learned that the shameless self-promoter is holding the visibility you are too afraid to claim. The ruthless opportunist is wielding the leverage you are too polite to use. The arrogant boundary setter is protecting the energy you are constantly giving away. You saw the brutal mathematics of projection, understanding that hating your enemy makes you blind, emotional, and tactically stupid. You learned the devastating physics of shadow reclamation. You learned to tear up the covert contract, to assassinate the nice guy persona, and to extract the raw, amoral uranium of your darkest traits. You learned to weaponize strategic omnipresence, asymmetric loyalty, and the iron perimeter. And finally, you learned the supreme power of the integrated mind, the calm, unbothered, terrifying presence of the sheathed sword. There is an ancient, unyielding truth to the architecture of the human soul. You cannot conquer the world until you have conquered the monster in your own basement. As long as you continue to point your finger at the darkness in others, you will remain a prisoner of your own light. You will remain weak, reactive, and permanently at the mercy of the predators who have accepted their nature. It is time to stop complaining about the wolves. The next time you feel that burning, visceral knot of hatred toward a rival, a colleague, or a public figure, the next time your ego desperately tries to wrap you in the warm blanket of moral superiority, freeze. Anchor your feet to the earth. Do not panic. Do not look away. Do not retreat into the safety of the herd. Look directly at the monster you despise. Study its fangs. Study its claws. Study its ruthless, unapologetic success. Recognize the mirror. Acknowledge the reflection. Shatter the glass. Absorb the energy and show the world exactly what you are truly capable of. You do not defeat the monster by hiding from it. You defeat it by becoming a superior beast. Now, go and claim your empire. Thank you for staring into the abyss with quick audiobooks. If this masterclass has shattered your illusions, destroyed your projections, and given you the keys to your own psychological sovereignty, ensure you subscribe, like, and return for more uncompromising, relentless deep dives into psychology, power, and the pursuit of absolute freedom. Until next time, reclaim your shadow, stay sovereign, and stay dangerous.